see dope people.
And welcome back to another podcast. This is Dope People, and I am your host, Hayden Green. You know, Brooklyn's favorite polymath. Listen, I haven't heard from the other boroughs, so it might be New York's favorite polymath, but we're not going to talk about that. But for right now, it's Brooklyn's favorite polymath. And Dope People is my podcast where I interview people that I consider to be dope. I feel like I know a lot of dope people, and I want you to get to know them as well. And for those of you who are not familiar with the term dope, it's kind of like a throwback term, and it means something that's amazing, that's interesting. And so I interview interesting people. And for this episode, I have one of the most interesting people that I know, been killing it in the art industry, and I really want you to know him as well. Put your hands together for Mr. James Harris. The third, is it?
I'm a junior. I haven't had a third yet.
Okay.
That out.
James Harris Jr. James, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful.
No, listen, man. Thank you for carving out some time. I know you are a very, very busy person. So, James, we normally set the litmus test with the show by asking our guests one simple question: who do you think is dope? Now, it could be somebody that you met one time, or somebody that you know personally. But who do you think is dope?
This is going to be very interesting. Who do I think is dope? Is my brother's third grade teacher.
I gotta hear this lineage. Go with that.
Yeah. She was not my teacher. She was my brother's teacher. But just to show you the power of educators, I will never forget this. I was in third grade, and I had just repeated the third grade. I had learning differences, and with that, back in the 80s, or even the early 90s, you had educational systems that didn't really specialize in variety of just educational tools. So for me, because I'm very, arts and creative driven, those kind of curriculums during that time didn't really exist. We had our standard, teachings where you go to your class and then prepare for standardized tests, and everything was revolved around standardized tests and that structure and the system. So with my brother's teacher, her name, I don't know if she's living or not, but her name was Miss Shipley. I don't know her first name, but it was Miss Shipley. I went to an all-black elementary school in Pensacola, Florida, and very conservative area. And that seemed to be the one black school in town, elementary school. And she was a white teacher. She was a white educator teaching black students. And, it sounds very, colonial and very prehistoric during that era. It's like, but you have to think about it. During that time, we're only about 25 years past desegregation. So it's interesting because the tentacles of all of that is still there, right? So given all of that, my brother would come home with all of these different kind of projects. They're just out of the ordinary, extraordinary type of projects. And for me, as a kid, one of the things that really attracted to me, especially when it came to just school and assignments, is presentation. And I had a thing about, looking through textbooks and seeing the pictures. And for some weird, reason, I was attracted to lamination, like pages that were laminated, and just the texture of paper and the different kind of type. So to me, the way how I saw education, the way how I saw my studies, had to have some kind of appeal to me, because that's what was stimulating me, was just the aesthetic of everything. That said, my brother had a project. He had to write short stories and, put them on colorful drawing construction paper. And then the teacher would eliminate, the stories and put into a book, a series of just personal short stories on laminated sheets of paper. And she would bind it together. And so he literally at the end of the project came home with this beautiful, third grader written assignment, where you want to call it, kind of cipher. And that attracted my eyes. And not only that, I saw, what he was writing. I was like,
Right.
well, I have a story to tell. I have a story to share. And I found out like me writing was the best way of self-expression. And I think really that was the pinnacle at that moment when I discovered like, wow, the power of writing. Like I can really write what's in my mind. I can really just kind of flush it out. I don't have to think about it at the spur of the moment and just say it. It's like it's stuck on paper, and not only stuck on paper, it's stuck on beautiful paper, and it's crafted and
Laminated.
on laminated paper, right? And it's just the process of having to go through that and then seeing your work like being, you know, locked under that plastic on that sheet of paper. It was just locked in. It's like, wow, I can hang this. It's the presentation of it. Ever since then, I've been stuck into just that mind frame of presentation and writing. And I think that's what really kind of jump started me on that journey, and me not even knowing it and kind of rediscovering it, not knowing that I would ever be a writer.
Wow.
And I think it's something that she kind of spoke into me.
Wow. I tell people all the time is that when we go about doing what we are supposed to in this world, we direct it sometimes at one particular person, but the residual effects are wide ranging and wide reaching, because we never know who's also looking at us and who's also finding inspiration from our work as well. Whether it is something like laminating a young child's story, or doing something that people can see on a wider scale. People are always watching themselves. So that's a great example of that. And you were not alone. Lamination for young children seems like to be the highest pinnacle of like sophistication. It's like, oh man, I got my work laminated.
Yeah, it was a really big deal. I mean, and especially when you're that age, I think really that was the first time I saw how my work could look to other people.
Yeah.
It under that laminated shell.
And then I work in higher education, and we laminate stuff all the time. I was like, wait, we're wasting lamination on the directions to the bathroom. I was like, what are we doing?
Right. Exactly.
Well, James, I wanted to take a moment. I want to thank you for sharing that. And I want to take a moment to tell you why I think you're dope. We don't know each other for a very long time. I met you during the pandemic, right? Or a little bit after the pandemic. And one of the things that I found out about what our project was, or your project, I'm not going to take claim for it, but your project was a Black History Month segments, little snippets that ran through during Black History Month that really focused on spoken word artists and talking about Black history. Palms to the ground, I hear rumbling. Generations of strife vibrating up my arm in syncopation with my soul. Beats of hooves and boots of men who have never been able to call this nation their own strike out a new tune on my veins like piano wire. They call them buffalo. I call them ancestors. Black history is our history.
CBS 2 commemorates Black History Month.
And it was done in a stylish way, and you eventually won an Emmy for that.
Yeah.
But that's not what I think is dope about it. I think being creative around that stuff is something that's great, but I know you had to fight for that.
Yeah, I had to fight real hard.
And I know
years in the process.
Yeah, and I know that at a certain point in time, you could have gone left and said, you know what, I'm just going to do what the normal stuff is. But I knew that I knew you had a vision, and I knew that you wanted other people to understand and see where you were going with it, that you needed to highlight these spoken word artists, that you needed to talk about some of these tertiary Black History Month characters like Mae Jemison and people like that nobody really talks about, because it's like we get stuck on the three M's. But yeah, so normally when we're having this conversation about the way that Black history gets shaped, it stops at those major figures. But like really having an effort to talk about people that maybe people have not heard about, and do it in a poetic way with spoken word and out in the streets. I thought it was brilliant, and I thought that was the dopest thing that you fought for that, right? Because I think that it opened a lot of doors for the way that they, and you know who they is, but that they think about the way we put our history out there.
Yeah, and I don't think, and also one of the things too about that project is there was a two-part project. So one was working with spoken word artists, and the other was with kids. And so we did a different version, how we kind of wrote script for the kids, and we scripted them about their historical figures. And it wasn't about your typical historical figures. It was people like, um, you know, Lieutenant Chappie James and Alvin Ailey, and a different kind of historical figures. But that project really was an 8-year project in the making, and it took um you know a climate of, like, the George Floyd situation. It took a climate of DEI. It took a climate of a combination of things to kind of motivate, I guess you could say, the hands who had the money over it, to see its value. And
Yeah.
finally, they did see its value.
Yeah. No, and I'm just happy that I was able to be a part of that. It was really dope.
Yeah, yeah, and even me coming across you was really interesting because I didn't really know any kind of spoken word artists, and I kind of put a feeler out there. I put it on all the social medias, and good friend, I think it was Paul Shaw, I think,
Paul Shaw.
who recommended you to me, and the
Listen,
moment.
we're not gonna mention Paul Shaw on this podcast. His head is already too big. We're not doing that. He's already on now, and now people are gonna see it. Great.
Oh, right, right, and we don't want to boost Paul's head up because Paul would rub it in my face, but it's all good.
Right now, Paul is in South Africa, and he's probably his ear is twitching.
Yes, 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 for real. But yeah, and I think it's because of, I think what is so important, especially when you do like these kind of projects, working in especially white corporate spaces, is this gives me opportunity to go back to my community and bring them into that space. And so I had to, look at it as, I'm gonna make this a very educational learning experience. I'm making it how they'll look at revenue cost, but then they'll see the value and content of it, and then they'll see like, oh, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they ran those ads for like 3 or 4 years after that.
Yeah.
And quick story, and those ads are important to me, and I'll tell you why. One of our close friends, her mother used to look out for that ad every day. It's like, I saw Hayden on TV. Yeah, I saw Hayden on TV. And when they stopped running them, it was about 4 years later, and they stopped running them. She would say, how come I don't see Hayden on TV in February? What's going on? I need to see Hayden on TV. And she would call up the station and say, I don't see Hayden Green on my TV set. Y'all need to fix that, right? Like, she was that adamant, and she recently passed this year. But I know it was a big blow to the whole family, but there was something about the way she loved, and I don't know whether or not it was because she was happy for me, or she was just happy to say, I know that person on my television set, like he's been in my living room kind of thing. But it was always one of those things. And shout out to Bella. I know you're listening from wherever you are, and but that was a really big deal for her to see me on TV, and I have to thank you for being able to give that to her and to our family.
Yeah. And let's, have to, give credit to where credit is due. It's like, you're a great performer. So, you know, your alliteration, the tone and pitch of your spoken word was just dead on, and it was so appropriate. And even to this day, we can still keep rerunning these ads, and they're still going to be just as appropriate as they were like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Something that I'm trying to rejuvenate in a different kind of form than Second Life. So I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right. So, James, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to pay the bills a little bit, and then we will come right back and we're going to hear what dope thing you're up to. So, again, we'll be right back. Come on back.
I see dope people.
Welcome back to Dope People. I am your dope host, Mr. Hayden Green. I'm wearing my Prince shirt today. This happens to be my favorite Prince song, Starfish and Coffee, Maple Syrup and Jam. And it really speaks to the differentiated way that people understand themselves and end up and show up in spaces. And there is one person that exemplifies that as Mr. James Harris, who shows up in spaces and really knocks it out the box. James, thank you again for being on the show. So when we come back, well, we're back now. I want to hear what you are doing that is dope right now. And that could be one-time thing, like I won an Emmy, or it could be something like I, do X, Y, and Z every single week at certain place and mentor people. Like, what dope thing are you up to right now?
So working on several things, but most recently, I did win that Emmy, but and actually also run a NABJ award connected to the spoken word project too, which is cool. But saying all that to say that recently I won a 2024 Clio Award, which is one of the highest honors in television creativity.
Yes, it is.
So I'm kind of riding off that momentum and trying to kind of fuel it into a couple of projects I have going on. For example, one of them I'm working on Bed-Stuy's largest art mural to be featured. And it's been a work in progress. It's been going on for about the past 4 years. We partnered with an organization called Groundswell and also with city councilmen, our local city councilmen. We're still trying to negotiate the figurations of the mural itself, as well as with Representative Hakeem Jeffries. And then in addition to that, I'm working on a new Black History project with NBC. I'm trying to put together where we're just pitching it right now, hoping it will be casted where we can do another spoken word project. Keep your ears out, Hayden.
Yep.
Where we can feature, Black history figures along with products that are out in like Black made products that are out in the world and what they're doing. Trying to think. I have so many things going on swirling in my head right now. I'm just like, let me figure it out. But we have the art mural going on. When I'm saying the art mural is put together by an organization called Safe Space for Dreams. And pretty much the art mural would be for the youth within the Bed-Stuy community, given the fact, we have gentrification, we have the disparity in education, disparity in job workforce, among many other things. And so this, I hope, will bring a piece of inspiration to the youth and the community. I used to volunteer at the Tompkin Houses for a couple of months, going on about a year, and the funding got cut by the city. And so, I think, after having that experience, I see the need, like there needs to be more positive reinforcements just in the community themselves for youth to see.
And let's talk a little bit about the mural. Where will the mural be?
So the mural would be at the intersection of Fulton Street and Troop, next to the McDonald's. And the good thing about this location, it's right off of the Kingston and Troop stop, and it's not obscured by a building because it's right next to our parking lot. And it's going to be 4 stories tall. So we're pretty much pretty excited, especially during the regentrification process of the neighborhood.
Absolutely dope. Well, That is, and I know that there's a whole bunch of dope places that you are sticking your hands in and making sure that that you have your influence, and we will list all of the ways that people can get in contact and follow you around. But thank you for sharing that, and I look forward to a 4-story mural in Bed-Stuy. I try not to go into Bed-Stuy too much, you know. I'm an East Flatbush kind of guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have to say, a lot of folks are leaving Bed-Stuy to go to East Flatbush, but it's for good reasons. So hey,
But so James, we end our show every episode with a dope moment in history, and so I wanted to really um, do something that speaks to you, and it's something that I found very, very surprising. So I looked up who was the first Black director to win an Emmy, a nighttime, a regular Emmy. It's daytime Emmys and the what do you call the regular Emmys? They're just Emmys, right? Or
yeah, just Emmys. There's so many categories in Emmys. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
So I looked up to see the first person to win, a Black director to win a major Emmy. And do you know what year that happened?
I have no idea.
It was 2017.
Wow.
Right. It was Donald Glover winning for Atlanta.
Wow. Yeah. And I won mine in 2020, so that's not too long ago.
Yeah, it completely blew my mind, right? Like, because we think about Oscars and even with the Oscars, the directors, Black directors haven't had a long history, but we think about the first person to win an Oscar, Hattie McDaniels, and then you have Sidney Poitier and all the rest of that stuff. And those are people who laid the groundwork, and those were in the 60s and the 50s. But to think that the first Black director to win an Emmy didn't happen until 2017 just completely blew my mind.
Wow. And actually, there's speculation that I might be the first person from New York City to win an Emmy within my category for like television advertising. So that still has to be vetted, but it's so easy to see, and because you go inside these groups, like for example, I judge the Emmys now, and I find myself still being the lone Black person, and I actually ran for the Emmys board, and I didn't make it, but you look at the people who's over the board, you have to be nominated by the board to be considered to even run, and so. Right. It's so much that still needs to be done, so much more within all of these award organizations. There's still a lot of disparities that needs to be fixed.
Absolutely. Just getting people to have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So James, like we talked about, you have a lot of stuff going on. How can people follow you? How can people get in contact with you? How do people reach out?
Yeah. So I'm launching a new website. It's jimmyharris.com. That's JIMMIHARRIS.com. They can also find me on Facebook under James Harris, LinkedIn, James Harris, WGA, and also on IG, Instagram at Jimmy. Just type in JJIMMII, Jimmy, and I should pop up.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And for those of you who enjoyed, make sure that you like, that you save, that you share, that you subscribe, do all the things. And plus, if you know somebody that is good that needs to be on the show, please get in contact with us, and we will definitely book them so that you too and everybody can hear the dope things that your person is doing. James, thank you so much for taking the time out. This has been fun. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Excellent. And so we will be back next week with another dope person. But until then, go forth and be dope.